This is the kind of thing that I've been saying for a while now, that I think they need to, at the very least anyway, entertain the idea of thinking about doing for the Halloween movie franchise. Let's talk about it. It's a fucking shit show! What you think you see, what you think you hear, that's what it's about. Mood and atmosphere. No, it's fucking garbage. It's garbage. Mood and atmosphere. Now that I really like. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I want to see. Hey folks, how you doing? Dave McRae here. Okay, in this video, I want to talk about something that I totally forgot about. I remember hearing about this a couple years ago. And I think the reason why I forgot about it, and probably most of you, if you knew about it then, have forgotten about as well, some of you probably don't even know about this, is because for the most part, all of last year in 2018, the focus was solely on Halloween 2018, as it should have been. So anything that had to do with John Carpenter, anything that he might have been working on, anything that he might have been in development on, anything that he might have been thinking about, took a backseat to Halloween 2018. So much so that nobody was talking about any of this. And so much so that when I read this article today on bloodydisgusting.com, I was like, oh shit, I totally forgot about that. So what is the crux of the article? I will read it to you, by the way. But essentially, a couple years ago, in 2017, according to Bloody Disgusting, and yeah, I think that's when it was, John Carpenter had entered a development deal with UCP, Universal Cable Productions, to produce a anthology type of horror series for the Sci-Fi Network entitled John Carpenter's Tales for a Halloween Night. And which sounds pretty cool, right? Well, unfortunately, it looks like that has fallen through. And there's a very specific reason why, which is kind of interesting. So, and I mean, interesting in the sense that if it's true, I have a lot of respect for that. Anyways, here's what the article has to say on bloodydisgusting.com. Here we go. Back in 2017, Universal Cable Productions announced a development deal with John Carpenter, which was to see the horror master executive producing scripted programming with UCP for the NBC Universal Cable Entertainment portfolio, as well as for external networks and streaming services, along with his producing partner Sandy King. UCP and Carpenter went into development on Tales for a Halloween Night for Sci-Fi, we learned. The series was to be based on Carpenter's award-winning graphic novel anthology of stories, where he brings together storytellers from the worlds of movies, novels, and comics for a collection of horror stories featuring graveyards, sunken ships, creepy crawlers, and ghosts. Carpenter was intending on directing at least the pilot episode of the series. But Sandy King breaks the bad news this week that the plug, for good reason it seems, has been pulled. And according to bloodydisgusting.com, this is what Sandy King had to say, and I quote, Sci-Fi wanted Tales for a Halloween Night, but it quickly became evident that they just wanted the title. And I really saw a disaster on the horizon, King just told comicbook.com. So I went, no. This is not a good idea. It was a greenlit series, but if it's not going to be something cool for the fans and for the eventual audience, then I don't think it's a good idea to do it. It's dead, King confirmed. I think we have a pretty good idea what our fans want to see. It doesn't mean something can't be done, but at its core, the people we work with have to respect horror fans and respect the genre. That's the core of it, not just respect the fact that horror right now makes money. End quote. In other words, if it's going to be done, it's going to be done right. Respect is how the article on bloodydisgusting.com ends. So what are my thoughts on the article? Well, my first thought was, damn, that really sucks, because that's something I would have loved to have seen. Now, that doesn't mean it was going to be successful, but if John Carpenter was potentially, at the very least, going to direct the pilot episode and set the foundation and tone for future episodes to come, that's something that I would have loved to have seen. Now, look, John Carpenter isn't necessarily the John Carpenter of old. It may not have been the an episode that is classic Carpenter, but maybe it would have been. And who knows? I know that he has said on many occasions that he really has no interest in, directing another feature film anymore, really, at the end of the day. And I believe him. I believe that he's telling the truth. But maybe, depending on his experience on that pilot episode, depending on how well it's received, maybe he might think, I might have one more left in me. And maybe that one more left in him becomes a classic. Who knows? I mean, I have no idea, right? But at the very least, it would have been cool to definitely see that episode and see where the series would have gone. So I'm disappointed about that. The other thing that I think about is if Sandy King is telling the truth, then yeah, mad respect for her. Look, what Sandy King is basically saying here is, if you read between the lines, what she essentially is saying is that the Sci-Fi Channel wanted to go their own way, but they wanted to use the name that we came up with, and maybe even use John Carpenter's name because they probably were hoping that he would still be an executive producer. So they wanted to use John Carpenter's Tales for a Halloween Night, but they didn't want to use any of the source material from the graphic novel. That's my understanding of this. They probably wanted to go their own route and sort of capitalize on things that were hot right now, appeal to a certain demographic, things that are in the horror culture right now, which isn't necessarily in the graphic novel, maybe at least to the degree that they wanted to go. And, part of the development deal was probably that we were under the understanding that we were going to use this source material at the very least as a blueprint. That doesn't mean that they would use everything in there, but to get things rolling, they might use quite a few of the stories that appear in there. I'm sure they would come up with their own shit too. But my guess is that Sci-Fi was like, nah, we're not. We want to capitalize on. Oh yeah, hey, you know what they did with Get Out? Let's have something like. Oh hey, you know what they did with and they wanted to do sort of things that because obviously that makes money. Could potentially make money. And I understand that. Look, this is show business. It's always about making money. Let's not fool ourselves, even for Sandy King and John Carpenter. However, I tend to really kind of buy this because John Carpenter is at an age right now where he doesn't give a look. He hasn't given a fuck in a long time, but he's at an age where he has nothing left to prove. He's 70 years old, and if he's going to be involved in some sort of capacity in a executive producing role, or sign on to put on his director hat again and go out and direct a television episode for all intents and purposes, he's got to be. It's got to be something that gets him inspired. It's got to be something that can get him up in the morning. And if it's not, and they're just using his name, and he's like, fuck, I don't want that, despite the fact that he might reap some of the financial benefits. So, because I think he probably feels very sort of, attached to this source material, and probably for good reason. It doesn't mean that he doesn't want to make money and boatloads of it, but I tend to buy this more because we know John Carpenter's love-loathing relationship with Hollywood and the studio system. We know how he feels about that. He's felt this way for a long time. So if he feels at any point that they're taking advantage of him, or they're taking advantage of him by using his name and but not really doing what he wants to do, I could totally see him going, fuck off, get the fuck out. I'm not stupid. You know what I mean? 100%. So I kind of buy that. And I buy what Sandy King is saying, because she's not just his longtime producer, folks. Sandy King is his wife. Some people forget that Sandy King and John Carpenter have been married for what? 30 years? 25 years? 30 years? Somewhere around there. So if somebody knows John Carpenter really well, it's probably going to be Sandy King. And they probably, jive well on their views of Hollywood and the motion picture industry right now. And if we're going to get involved in things at our age, at this point in our careers, it's got to be this, that, and the other. And if it's not, well, then fuck it. And you're not going to use my name, because I feel strongly about this. That doesn't mean that John Carpenter didn't reap the benefits of the shitty Halloween, sequels. He did. But that's because he created the character. He created Michael Myers. He created Laurie Strode. He created Donald Pleasance. He created Dr. Loomis, right? He created these characters. So why shouldn't he reap the benefits? Yeah, of course he should. Legally, he should. Legally, he's entitled to it. So why not? What are you going to say? No? Come on. Now, the other side of the coin is, when I read this article, I thought to myself, this is what the Halloween movie franchise needs to evolve to, potentially, for potential longer-term success. I mean, everything wears thin. Everything runs its course, and novelty wears off with everything eventually. But I don't think the future is in Michael Myers movies. I think you might be able to get one more, maybe two. But you're eventually going to have to stop because you've gone back to the original intent of the character. And by doing that, you've painted yourself into a corner because that original intent of the character has a shelf life. So, there's only so many Michael Myers movies you can do with James Jude Courtney in this universe until you're going to find yourself exactly where you started, which was, fuck, now we have a few shitty movies because we're writing all this shit just to justify him being around and keeping the narrative going. You've heard me say this ad nauseum. So, I've always been of the mindset of, at the very least, talking about an anthology series, because at no other point in movie history has the word anthology been relevant, has the word anthology been in the pop culture consciousness. When Season of the Witch came out in 1982, nobody knew what the fuck that was. Nobody knew what anthology meant. It certainly not on a broader fandom scale. So it was very strange, and certainly marketing was different then. And unless you were subscribed to, Fangoria or in nerdy circles, the broader sort of horror community, even if you were a horror fan, you didn't necessarily know what the fuck was going on with Halloween 3. Now, because of the internet and social media and fan pages and, movie pages, and that anthology, that it's out there and it's more universally accepted now. I'm not saying that the movies would be good. I'm just saying that understanding that this is where we're going and here's why is more universally accepted. And if it's done really well, will be more universally appreciated. So, in my mind, that's the direction I think you need to go in, because there's so many great, fucked up, weird, creepy, eerie, scary stories that could be told under the Halloween brand. And an example is old Charlie Bowles from Russellville, right? That's the classic one that everybody talks about from the original Halloween. That scene where Dr. Loomis is walking in the graveyard with the graveyard caretaker, and the graveyard caretaker's telling him a story about old Charlie Bowles. And I think he says something like, he went out to the kitchen to grab himself a hacksaw, and then he kissed his wife and his 2 children goodbye, and then he proceeded to. And then he's interrupted by Dr. Loomis, and we never find out. Obviously, we can kind of put 2 and 2 together of what he, proceeded to do. But, that's that story, because it was cut off, it's entered that sort of pop culture consciousness of something really cool about that movie. If he had finished the story, I don't think it necessarily would have entered the Halloween sort of mythology in the ways that it has. It's the fact that he was interrupted and we don't know what happened next, that there's that mystique and mystery, that surrounds that. So, maybe that's your starting point. What if that was an amazing movie? And what if Charlie Bowles, depending on how well it's written, depending on how well it's developed, and depending on how they approach it, what if it's amazing? What if you watch the movie and you're like, okay, that actually was fucking good. And Charlie Bowles becomes, this new sort of iconic character. Who knows, right? I'm not saying it will, but there's the potential of that. And then, of course, there's the graphic novel that Carpenter's got. And maybe there's a couple things in there where you're like, oh, dude, okay, we might have to sort of take some creative liberties a little bit and kind of polish this up for the big screen, of course, because this is in print, but that's awesome. Let's do that. And then maybe there's there's so much great, scary, fucked up shit that could be awesome to see. And maybe some of the anthology films are in the Michael Myers universe, right? Like maybe in the Charlie Bowles film, Charlie Bowles is driving an old sort of 60s car down the street and you see a sign that says Haddonfield 30 miles or something, right? And that's it. That's the only reference, but it's, it's an Easter egg, right? It's to let you know that, oh, we're still in the same, it's cool shit like that. Who knows? The potential is there. That doesn't mean it would be successful. And I certainly understand that Michael Myers is the brand. I get it. But I do not have any confidence that those of you that want Michael Myers to live forever in movies, that you're going to get good movies. And if you don't care about that, if you don't give a fuck if the movie is good or not, and all you care about is just Michael Myers, well, then knock yourselves out. But I actually care about quality over quantity. You know, I don't want them to sell out, but I want them to continue to continue on telling great, fucked up, scary stories. And you know what? At the end of the day, winning solves everything. You can be pissed off that they're taking Michael Myers out of the equation, and you can be fucking pissed off that they're no longer making Michael Myers Halloween films. But you know what? If the Halloween films they do make happen to be really good, you're not going to give a fuck. And don't tell me you will, because you won't. And I mean, if the movies are really good, like you walk away going, okay, that was fucking awesome. And now there's like this new character that you're like, fuck, I want to see more from that character. Winning solves everything, okay? It does. And I think actually it's worth the risk. But that's my opinion. Anyways, folks, my name's Dave McRae. Comment below and let me know your thoughts. Do you want to see that anthology series? Would you like to see this TV series still happen? Do you think maybe there's stories in that graphic novel? Maybe you've even read that graphic novel and there's stories in there that you think would make great films, great feature films. Comment below and let me know. What do you want to see from old Charlie Bowles in Russellville? I kind of want to see that. Yeah. Do you want to see it? Old Charlie Bowles? Maybe he was just a guy named Charlie who just made some bowls. I don't know. Maybe he used the bowls to hit people over the heads. Oh, sorry. Anyways, comment below and let me know. If you want to follow me on Facebook, you can at facebook.com/manythingsdavemcrae. That's where I tend to post in the meantime and in between time when I'm not posting here. The link is in the description, as well as links to everything else down there. You can check it out until your heart's content. So yeah, in the meantime and in between time, I will talk to you guys soon. Cheers.